These are literally the same proteins as though they are being produced through a chicken. We've actually gone through and looked at hundreds of proteins, but more specifically in the egg, all 100 proteins. What we have done is we've looked at and selected specifically for individual proteins that have those hyperfunctionality benefits. In isolating those proteins, we've been able to match or exceed the performance of those animal proteins in the applications that we are using them in. So very specifically, we have one protein that is hyperfoaming. It's great for making meringues. It's good for making macarons. We found a high gelling protein, which is perhaps the most important for us, because as we've looked at some of the applications, we've seen that baking, meat binding, et cetera, has been a very good market for us to mine, especially with large CPG companies over time. Having come from a very large CPG company in General Mills, there's nothing worse than watching your margins go down by 4 or 5% overnight as your key ingredient costs go up. And so being able to provide that stable pricing that's not correlated to effects like the bird flu is going to be highly advantageous over time.
Hi everyone, today's video I want to go through more detail on some more recent updates with the Every company. I find them to be one of the more interesting companies in the precision fermentation space. They are working on eggs, and if you had the fortunate luck to try any of their initial products, well, at least collaborations that they've done with others, they might still be selling the pop culture juice in Los Angeles. I did some videos early on them when I got to try some of their products, and yeah, if you try any of them, you'll know that they're just delicious. So there's just been some really interesting updates a couple months ago posted by a capital management firm in partnership with them, and just great presentation overall. My 3 takeaways for this video, before we get into it: A, take a look at who their customers are, where they are in the development cycle. So one example, Alpha Foods, they're making plant-based meats. They're using this protein in there, well, we'll see, but they're currently in development and no one's actually commercialized anything yet. We still have some time before we actually start seeing these products on the market. One of the things I can see a lot of these plant-based meat companies doing is to replace their use of methylcellulose with every egg precision fermentation proteins.
We can replace methylcellulose today with our product.
It's derived from cellulose, sold under a variety of trade names, used as a thickener and emulsifier in various food and cosmetic products. Like cellulose, it's non-digestible. If we actually look at the website by Alpha Foods, it looks like they're no longer using methylcellulose, but we can see that they are using some form of cellulose. So I would expect these binding ingredients that are currently found in a lot of these plant-based meat products to be replaced with the every egg protein. We'll see what happens when Alpha Foods actually releases their first product. Second, every company currently contracts with Liberation Labs to build or to manufacture their protein, but in the long term, they are looking at building their own facilities. Third thing is they have demonstrated the ability to make an egg scramble. So that is really in direct competition to Eat Just and their mung bean egg scramble. So it'll just be interesting to see where the market evolves over the next 5 years as we start seeing more of these precision fermentation products actually hit the market. And if you are investing, here is a look at their funding history. Let's get into that video.
Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Director and Product Management at Every, Jared Altschul.
Right. So I'm actually very happy to be in Europe, where 1, people know how to pronounce my last name, and 2, know what it means. So thank you for that. But once again, thank you for having me here in Madrid today. This is very exciting to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the Every company, but also our vision for how we can help transition the food system to a more sustainable and humane food system over time. And the reason this is so important is that we have a growing population today and a growing need for protein. And if we know anything, is that as people move into the middle class, that desire and demand for protein continues to increase. but we also have an issue in the way that we source that protein. And at the Every Company, we believe that there shouldn't have to be a trade-off between high-functioning, great-tasting protein and sustainability. And so as we look to help build this more humane and sustainable food system, our goal is really to help accelerate that transition to animal-free protein. We believe that we can become the world's largest egg producer over time and ultimately shut down the last factory farm on Earth. And so why the egg platform? The egg is actually an amazing platform. For anyone who doesn't know a ton about eggs, there are over 100 proteins alone in just the egg. But when you're eating the egg or using the egg, you're actually using a combined average of all those proteins, right? Which is what makes it so great. However, what you aren't getting is the hyperfunctionality of many of those proteins. And at the Every Company, what we have been focusing the last 6 years on is mining that egg platform to find the single best proteins that we can use in various applications. And the way that we do that specifically is with a technology called precision fermentation. Now, some in the room might know what precision fermentation is. Can I get a hand raise if anyone knows what precision fermentation is? All right, we have a few experts, so you might have to correct me, which is great. But precision fermentation, the reason it's so valuable is that this is already a proven and scalable technology. This is a technology that has been used to make insulin. It's a technology that's been used to make rennet. And it's a technology in which there's already an existing manufacturing infrastructure. Perhaps more importantly, though, is that this technology, while it's been used in pharma, it hasn't been used in food as often. And what this allows us to do is to really create a technology moat where we are able to establish IP early on, and there's a very clear runway to get that IP established and filed. And that puts us in a great place in terms of being able to actually produce products that will have IP protection long term. So for those in the room, about 60%, I think, if I did my math correctly, while looking at hands being raised, who don't know what precision fermentation is, essentially we are taking the genetics sequence from an egg protein or chicken, and we are expressing those proteins over and over again through microbes. We are doing it in fermenters, and what comes out at the other end is what we'd call real egg proteins or bioidentical proteins. These are literally the same proteins as though they are being produced through a chicken. So what we like to say is we are chickenizing the yeast that we are using in order to create these bioidentical proteins. So Every has spent a lot of time already in this pursuit. We've actually gone through and looked at hundreds of proteins, but more specifically in the egg, all 100 proteins. What we have done is we've looked at and selected specifically for individual proteins that have those hyperfunctionality benefits. And what we have found is that in isolating those proteins, we've been able to match or exceed the performance of those animal proteins in the applications that we are using them in. So very specifically, we have one protein that is hyperfoaming. It's great for making meringues. It's good for making macarons. We've also been able to find a protein that has high optical clarity with no aftertaste. So what this means is that we can drop that protein into almost any beverage, low pH, et cetera, and still be able to maintain the taste and the texture of that beverage that exists today while adding 10, 15, 20 grams of protein. And then lastly, apologies because the timer's covering up that, we found a high gelling protein, which is perhaps the most important for us because as we've looked at some of the applications, we've seen that baking, meat binding, et cetera, has been a very good market for us to mine, especially with large CPG companies over time. So science is great. It's really good to be able to establish a technology, but it's more important when you're able to prove that in commercialized products. And where Every has really made large strides over the past couple of years is taking those proteins that we have created and being able to apply them to specific products. So we're very happy to say that we created the world's first animal-free protein smoothie. We also created, most recently, the world's first protein-boosted alcoholic juice using our optical clear protein, and then the world's first animal-free macaron. And maybe it wasn't a good idea to show a GIF there while I was going through this, because you're probably focused on the scramble that's going on behind you. But this is actually a liquid whole egg that we have been able to make with just our single egg white protein. So this liquid egg can create scrambles, it can create omelets. It truly has the same functionality of the whole egg, but just using that one egg white protein with some additional ingredients. So we're very excited about the potential for this, above and beyond even the B2B applications that we've already seen to date. What's really exciting about Every is that we know that there has been a lot of investment and a lot of activity, as was mentioned earlier, in the, call it the imitation or the plant-based space, and also in the bioidentical space as well, with cell ag and also precision fermentation. But Every really possesses the strongest first mover advantage in the bioidentical egg space. We have probably a 6 to 7 year head start in this space in terms of optimizing both the protein, the yeast strains and the proteins that we've been developing. We have a very strong IP moat, which is probably the most important for protecting long-term enterprise value. We have over $200 million of additional funding compared to the closest competitor in our space. And obviously, we have a great group of investors, which has really helped us accelerate our path to market. Why the egg market? Why are we so excited about the egg market? The egg market fundamentally is a very large market, $200 billion global market, fast-growing 7% CAGR. But more importantly, the egg market is a highly premiumized market. There's been a lot of regulatory pressure, especially within the US, around using cage-free eggs. There's been a ton of corporate commitments as it relates to upgrading their egg supply, and obviously around sustainability commitments as well. What this has led to is a fundamentally more premium protein. Unlike in the beef and dairy industry, where somewhere around 4 to 5% of that category is dominated by premium proteins, when you take into account cage-free and above, almost 34% of the market lives in this premium space today. And specifically, it operates around $35 a kg. Why this is important to us is, like any scaling company, we are continuing to drive our costs down over time, but we don't want to have to wait to enter the market. And what this allows us to do is to capture customers today, even while we are driving scale on our product. Why are companies, big CPG companies, why do they want to work with Every? Well, the reason they want to work with us is because we are solving very real pain points for them. What we've heard time and time again, obviously coming off the avian flu, was price volatility and undersupply. This is a critical pain point for a lot of CPG companies, and they do not want to go through that cycle again. Having come from a very large CPG company in General Mills, there's nothing worse than watching your margins go down by 4 or 5% overnight as your key ingredient costs go up. And so being able to provide that stable pricing that's not correlated to effects like the bird flu is going to be highly advantageous over time. Health and human safety. Obviously, this is never exposed to salmonella, which is commonly found on shelled eggs. Functionality, I mentioned it before. We are moving beyond functionality to hyperfunctionality. So one of the ways that we drive value is cost in use. We are seeing that with our products. We are able to achieve the same sensory benefits with lower inclusion rates. Obviously, nutrition, no cholesterol. Big hot button issue, and of course, ethical sourcing. But what I think has become even more exciting as we have been working on these platforms is that while there's the egg replacement market, we're constantly discovering incremental TAM. What that means is we're not just going after the egg replacement market. Our proteins, because of the hyperfunctionality, allows us to enter new markets. For example, never before fortified beverages, protein concentrate, alt meat enhancement. We can replace methylcellulose today with our product. And so the more and more that we can discover these, what we'd call high value markets, the more we can tap into revenue immediately while we are scaling our production. And so in that manner, we have built a robust pipeline of world-class customers. I'm sure you recognize some of the names on the list here. They range from plant-based companies all the way to some of the largest CPG manufacturers in the world. We've had very productive conversations to date. We have got non-binding offtakes as well. But I think what's most encouraging is that, I forgot who stole my thunder a little bit with the quotes earlier, but I appreciate it. We have had amazing feedback from some of these large CPG companies in terms of the actual productivity of these ingredients. I love the Kellogg's quote, which is a little generic, but a good one. There's nothing like this on the market. Or Unilever, it's the best functionality of any vegan solution we've ever tried. These are really important pieces of feedback for us because we know that there are so many different competitors out there. And to be able to stand above all of them in terms of the functionality is where Every is really going to win over time. And so, as you saw, there's a great list of customers who are all waiting to use our product. The area that we are most hyper-focused on right now is driving down our unit costs, an area that McWin has been very valuable in helping along that path. Where were we before? So we were, like any startup company, we were reliant entirely on CMOs. That's great to get off the ground and to be able to show proof of concept in market. But over time, we have to drive our costs down. And the way that we're going to be doing that is first through production partnerships, where we're able to get our partners to invest CapEx into facilities where they see the business opportunity associated with partnering with us. And then over time, in the next 1 to 2 years, getting to an Every controlled facility. That's probably the most important piece. And the reason this is so important is that we have already demonstrated that our technology can work on a 100,000 liter scale. That is industrial scale. So we've retired the tech risk on our first protein. The second protein's not too far behind. And we know that once we are able to actually build out these facilities, our product will already work on there and substantially drive down the costs. And I'd be remiss, because everyone has talked about it in a very good way, to not talk about the people. One of the things that they have done over the past 6 months is they have built out an exceptional leadership team. We've hired a head of manufacturing, a head of commercial, a COO, a VP of technology, an SVP of legal, a product guy. They all come from diverse backgrounds, everywhere from large CPG to tech to living in the alt protein space. This is really a team of experts. And I will say, having just joined the company a few months ago, a team that has gelled really well together to start to really help drive the conversations that we need to ensure our success in the very short term. So with that, I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Time for one question.
Yeah.
Great. One question.
Hi, Jared. So one of the products that we're very excited about is the soluble protein, adding proteins to drinks. Perhaps you can comment a little bit how difficult to achieve that is, because it's very difficult to achieve with plant-based proteins, and
absolutely.
And there's a massive TAM.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that the Every protein stands out is that it has both optical clarity and no aftertaste. If you look at the other plant-based proteins on the market, they are able to fortify, but when they are fortifying, they're doing it with, you're looking at the beverage and you can see the inclusion of the protein. They gel at certain temperatures. And then most importantly, they have an aftertaste. And as I mentioned, anyone who has ever worked with a food product, the most important thing is taste, No one ever comes back if it doesn't taste good. And so for us, one of the ways, I was just having this conversation, we know we are successful when someone has no idea that our protein is in the product. I never want to hear someone say, your protein tastes great. I want to hear the drink tastes great, the baked item tastes great. And so that's what we have achieved so far, is being able to let the products that we are partnering with shine.
I'm Chris, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.